Welcome back, tuning into this morning's video. I'm going to have a bit of a look ahead out in towards the first week of July, the next 8 to 10 days, just seeing what's going on. I mean, just at the end, we're going to have a quick look at the latest update from South Korean model for the prediction for the whole of July. Before I go with the video, though, I just want to talk about the advertising. There's green keyword ads on all my pages at GapsWebBiz.com. The words display ads. If you write your cursor over them, if you click through the words, though, you'll be supporting GapsWebBiz.com by doing that. And also, video ad sitting just above my weather video here at GapsWebBiz.com. If you play the video ad, hit play on it, you will be supporting GapsWebBiz.com by doing that. You don't necessarily have to watch it, just hit play, and you'll be supporting the website by doing that as well. And thanks very much for doing it. So, going to start off with the NAO observed and forecast chart. Just quickly explain what the NAO is, the North Atlantic Oscillation. It's an index that really reflects the weather. It's not driving the weather, it isn't driving anything. It's reflecting the state of the atmosphere. Now, when the NAO is positive, it means we've got low pressure somewhere around Iceland and Greenland, and high pressure somewhere around the Azores. Will be strengthening the westerlies and producing quite Atlantic dominated sort of weather. When the NAO goes negative, the reverse happens, so we get blocking areas of high pressure forming around Iceland and Greenland, and will be developing low pressure underneath it somewhere through the mid-Atlantic around the Azores, and that's when we get northerly and easterly winds coming up. Many of the summers in recent years have tended to have negative NAOs, so we've tended to have blocking around Greenland and Iceland, and we've tended to have low pressure rolling in off the Atlantic underneath that, blocking on a southerly tracking jet stream. But this summer, we do appear to be having much more in the way of positive North Atlantic oscillation. So if we see the black line here, where the black line has been since June the 1st, and I'll just mark where we're starting from. June the 1st is starting around here. We have generally been quite positive. We did go a little bit negative with the NAO through the second week of June, from around the 8th to the 15th. We went a little bit negative then, but then we quickly picked back up in the second half of June, and that's really where we are now. We are positive with the North Atlantic Oscillation, and in terms of the forecast for the rest of June and into July, the North Atlantic Oscillation is predicted to stay really quite positive there. So very positive North Atlantic Oscillation indeed for the rest of June and on into July as well. Now, I say this isn't particularly driving anything, but it is reflecting what is going on in the atmosphere. It's reflecting the state of the pattern that we're in, and the state of the pattern on that observed and forecast chart is definitely telling us that we're seeing low pressure around Iceland and Greenland. We're seeing high pressure around the Azores coming in off the Atlantic, and we should be strengthening the westerlies and having a very westerly sort of summer. Now, a westerly summer isn't particularly good news for the north, because it means you're close to the low pressure. The low pressures and the jet stream will usually be running somewhere to the north of Scotland in a westerly summer. Of course, in winter, when you strengthen westerlies and the jet stream will be running right over the top of British Isles, but in summer, everything gets shunted a little bit further north. So it's not particularly good news for Scotland, but it is pretty good news for England and Wales. So if you have a look at the height anomalies from the ECMWF and the GFS, this is the 500 millibar heights, and we can see that we are indeed in very much of a westerly type situation. Now remember, blue and orange. Blue is reflecting below average heights, that's low pressure at 18,000 feet. Orange is reflecting above average heights, high pressure at 18,000 feet. We can see that on both the ECMWF 8 to 10 day 500 millibar height flow chart, we are indeed seeing low pressure somewhere around Iceland and Greenland. There's big low pressure up there, high pressure through the Atlantic from the Azores, stretching up in towards the south of the British Isles there. This is the ECMWF, by the way. I'll just mark that up there so you can see which chart is which. That's the ECMWF. And we are bringing the westerlies in more or less to the north of Scotland, or over Scotland, with that particular 8 to 10 day flow chart. 8 to 10 days is taking us from around the 3rd of July somewhere to around the 5th or 6th of July. The GFS, which is the chart that you're looking at on the left is on the right, sorry, is showing that again we've got low pressure here sitting up to the north of the country, somewhere around Iceland or Greenland, and yes, we've got the high pressure ridging through the Atlantic in towards, well, this is taking it a little bit further south. It's taking it more or less towards the Bay of Biscay and northern Spain, so consequently we are just a little bit further south with the westerlies coming through, so they're coming through further down in towards northern England and excuse me, some parts of England and Wales, whereas the ECMWF is taking the jet stream more or less over Scotland and to the north of Scotland. But the idea is very much the same on both charts, which is that we are very much in a westerly type pattern with high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, bringing the jet stream through more or less across Scotland, which is pretty good news actually for England and Wales, because it means whilst it's never desperately hot, we do at least keep it pretty dry and generally quite fine. So have a look at the GFS temperature ensembles for the upper atmosphere. Remember, the red line is where we should be at this time of the year. We can see we're actually a bit below average with the temperatures at the moment. Quite a long way below average actually. This is the ensemble for London, and that's really left over from the very cool and unsettled and windy weekend that we have. But what's interesting is that we're going to be lifting those temperatures up over the next few days. Once we get through to around the 29th, 30th, we're going to push the temperatures up above the red line, very slightly going above average, and then generally it looks like we're going to stay somewhere around the average throughout the first week of July, maybe a little bit above average through the first week of July. Certainly no sign of anything desperately hot coming up there, but very pleasant sort of temperatures, somewhere into the low to mid 20s, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think we are looking at quite a decent spell of weather. That's for London, and we can see that for the precipitation spikes. We haven't got too many at all. We've got one area of precipitation coming up from around the 27th to the 29th. Then it goes quite dry to around the 3rd to the 5th of July when we could start to get more precipitation. But really, this is quite a dry looking ensemble, you have to say. Whereas as we have a look at the ensemble for Manchester, it's the same sort of idea with the temperatures, but we do get more precipitation spikes coming through through the first week of July. Not a washout, but certainly more than is the case for London. And if we go further north and have a look at the Aberdeen ensemble, well, then we get a lot more precipitation spikes coming through throughout the ensemble. We get some quite large precipitation spikes in on some occasions. So again, that's just backing up the idea that for northern areas you're always going to be more unsettled because you're closer to the jet stream, you're closer to the westerlies. But for southern areas we are looking, I think, at some pretty decent weather coming up over the next week or two. Have a look at the temperature anomaly for the next week, the Tuesday the 25th of June to Tuesday the 2nd of July. It looks like we're going to be around or a little bit below average. It seems at the moment that whatever we do, we can't seem to get the temperature anomalies going particularly above average. It's probably mainly a reflection of the very cold North Sea and Channel that we've still got left over from the extraordinarily cold weather that we had through the start of the spring. So yeah, the temperatures are still struggling even in this westerly flow, but I think for southern areas we are looking at some warmer weather. It won't be particularly cold in the south, or particularly cool, but in the north certainly I think we are cooler because we're closer to that jet stream and the unsettled weather. Precipitation anomalies for the next week. Again, this is taking us from Tuesday the 25th of June to Tuesday the 2nd of July. We see that we've very much got a north-south split there going on. Northern areas are near normal with the precipitation, so for much of Scotland and down in towards northern England near normal. Actually very slightly above average for northwestern Scotland, but for these southern parts of the country, which is really stretching from Ireland, England and Wales, because we've got high pressure down to the southwest, the precipitation anomalies are coming out below average. It's going to be a dry weekly period coming up, always more unsettled in the north. So just have a look at the generic charts. First of all, we'll start with GFS. And the idea is that for a week's time, Tuesday the 2nd of July, we've got high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north. We're bringing westerlies through. The black line is where the jet stream is, and the jet stream is running just to the north of Scotland there. So that's just the indication that we push the jet stream north with that Azores high ridging in. And what we're going to find as we move through next week is that the low pressure will try to send weather fronts down across the country, but coming into that high pressure, those weather fronts are likely to be pretty weak once they get through to southern parts of the country, but always more settled in the north as we go through to the 10-day period, which takes us to the 5th of July. Well, again, it's the same sort of idea. The high pressure is to the southwest, but low pressure is to the north and the northeast. Very westerly type pattern. Then as we get through to the 6th of July, maybe turning a little bit more unsettled across southern parts of the country, with that pressure beginning to weaken down to the south, but certainly always more unsettled with that pattern to the north. The ECMWF shows we've got high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north in a week's time. Moving out beyond that to Wednesday the 3rd, and then Thursday the 4th, we take that low pressure running through to the north of Scotland. The high pressure is still ridging to the south, keeping southern areas largely dry. And then we bring another little feature through on Friday the 5th of July. But again, always the high pressure, the Azores high, close to southern parts of the country. Always low pressure more towards the north and the northwest. And then have a look at the Canadian model. That shows that again for a week's time we've got the low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south, very much westerly sort of pattern. Then it gets a little bit different because we start to block out the low pressure in the Atlantic, and we begin to reach high pressure up over British Isles and into Scandinavia. So by the time we get through to the 5th of July, we've got a proper Scandinavian high setting up there, bringing up very warm air from the south. I'm not sure about that evolution from the GEM. It's not particularly well supported by the GFS and the ECMWF just at the moment. The 500 millibar flow charts show that outcome isn't particularly well supported, but it's a possibility. You never know, we might start to build the high pressure post Scandinavia. If that happens, it will turn very warm indeed. But overall, I think we're looking at a week or two of really quite westerly dominated sort of weather, westerly pattern with high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, always more unsettled, cooler, wetter, windier for Scotland and Northern Ireland. For England and Wales, always drier, warmer, sunny, and not totally settled. There will be rain coming through at times, but always drier and warmer for southern parts of the country. Finally, just have a look at the South Korea model, which is just updated, see what that's showing going out into the rest of July. And we're going to start off with sea level pressure for the middle of July. Presumably this is broken down into 10-day periods, so from the 10th to the 1st to the 10th, the 10th to the 20th, and the 20th to the 30th, something like that. So this presumably is taking us from the 10th to the 20th. And it's showing that we've got high pressure really dominating the weather there. The red colours are above average pressure, and they are very much dominating the pattern, sitting more or less to the west of the country, so it wouldn't be particularly hot. The air is coming around that high pressure in that sort of direction, so it wouldn't be necessarily that hot, but it's certainly very settled and pleasant type weather. And I think this is really reflective of the westerly pattern that we've got going on at the moment. We'll continue to persist with it as we run through to the middle of June, and maybe even intensify the Azores high. But as we get through to the later period of July, it's taking us to late July, then we see a marked deterioration take place. The high pressure collapses, and we've got low pressure very much dominating the pattern there. We've completely switched it around, actually. Big change around from the middle of July to the late July. Very much unsettled there for presumably the 20th to the 30th of July would be a really wet and windy and quite cool as well. Finally, just had a very quick sneak peek at August. Then it raises the pressure up a little bit again. We find the pressure rising to the south and pressure rising to the northeast as well. We're actually in more or less near normal pressure, but that's I think an indication. But as you get through to early August, it is trying to build pressure back once again. So all very interesting. I think what we're looking at basically is a westerly flow for the next week to 10 days, probably a little bit beyond that. So it's always going to be better in the south, always worse in the north in this type of pattern in the summer. Then going out beyond that, I think the indications are that we're going to more or less keep that westerly sort of pattern, maybe settle it even more as we go through to the middle of the month. But later in the month, I think we could start to see some much more unsettled weather. But overall, a pretty decent July coming up. I did a video last week saying I thought we're in for a pretty decent July. I think we're going to have quite a nice month of it for July. So if we do, then I hope you enjoy it. That's it for now. It's a 5-day forecast tomorrow, so come back for that. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching.